Today we're going to go through payrolls. So I'm going to take you through how payrolls work, and then what we'll do is go through a couple of examples that you can potentially use in your account. So first, what we're going to do is we're going to go into our settings, and in the pay rate section over here, we're going to see payrolls next to our default rates. So in here, there's a couple of different ways that you can create your payment rules. I'll show you how to create. You would name your payment rule here, and then you would set different conditions based on the shift. So I would be able to set, for example, if an assignee is a certain person, or if there's a certain tag on the shift. You also have the option to adjust either the pay rate, the bill rate, total pay, or total bill. So if we go ahead with the pay rate here, we can set it to a specific number based on these conditions. We can increase it or decrease it by a certain amount. So we would take the base rate that would be applied to that shift and then impact it by this amount that we select. You could increase or decrease it by a certain percentage, and that's going to go off of what the base pay rate is. And additionally, you could select if you want to add a certain amount per unit that you would tag on the shift. And just a heads up that if you're going to do per unit, the column on the shift has to be a number that you're referencing. If we go into total pay, what that means is it's going to add, you can either set to a certain amount, you can increase or decrease the total pay by an amount, by percent, and per unit. So you can do all of those things, but it's going to apply to the total pay on the shift as a whole rather than applying to the hours. Everything is similar for bill rate here. And then same for total pay, total bill. Same thing with total bill. If you're going to increase or decrease by a percentage, it's going to be based off of what that total bill would have been without this payment rule. And then same thing for bill rate. The percentage is going to be based on the base bill rate. So first I'm going to go through these examples here for what we might do, why we do it a certain way, and then I'll take you through how to actually build these within the account. All right, so here's our first example. You might want to adjust shift pay based on the immediacy of a need. So maybe you're posting the shift within 24 hours of the start time. That's something you want to flag it as. Or maybe you want to increase the pay rate on a shift when you get up to 2 hours before that shift start time and no one has been assigned to it yet. So what you would do is you could tag the shift with immediate need. You could do this manually or through automations. And then for this example, 2 hours before the start time, if no one is assigned, you can increase the pay by 2 hours or $2 an hour. So we'll go through how to set that up. There's one thing I want to call out here that we've seen certain users drop a shift within those 2 hours and then pick it back up and get that increase. So you will need to make sure that you put a block in place so that users can't drop a shift within 2 hours of the start time, or if they do drop a shift within 2 hours of the start time, you block them from picking up shifts within that next 8 hours or whatever number you want to do. This one's a very simple one. So you can increase weekend shifts and you don't have to even tag those shifts with the date. In our conditions up here, you'd be able to utilize start time is, and then you have the option to select the day of the week on here. So you can see that you can increase the pay rate by a certain amount and the bill rate by a certain amount if you wanted to do that. Housing stipend is an interesting one. There's a couple of ways to do this. So one option is that you could specify which users do get a certain amount of housing, and you could apply this only on the shifts on Monday. So that would mean that this housing stipend would only be applied once a week. Another option that you have outside of payrolls would be to store the weekly housing stipend on the user. So let's say, for example, Amber actually gets $500 per week. You can add that amount to a shift via an automation and a currency column. Another fun one that you can do here, and this is actually using the ratings that we went through in our last feature spotlight, and you can find that as another video that we have available to you. But what you can do is add a bonus to a user's shift based on the rating that they received on that shift. So let's say, for example, a facility user has access to the shifts, they come in here and they could rate the user 5 out of 5 stars. You can use that as a condition here. So when a user is rated 5 stars on the shift, add a $20 bonus to the shift, or in this example here, you can increase the pay rate by 50 cents. Obviously, you'd have freedom to do whatever you want there. That's just an option for utilizing those ratings and increasing or rewarding that. Another thing I want to call out here is that you do have the ability to decrease or take away amounts. So like, for example, on someone's first shift, or maybe they're doing an orientation shift, you can get back $30 for them if you want to do a reimbursement for your background checks. So what you could do is tag a shift with the orientation shift type, and then in order to deduct, this should say total bill. I'll show you in the account, but total bill would decrease by $30. And so you'll just add that in as negative 30. In this next one here, we have a couple of per unit rates. So what you could do is add X-ray and EKG number of patients as a clock out requirement. So when your healthcare provider is clocking out, they must input those numbers there. And that's what we would use to calculate that per unit amount. So they would self-report those numbers, and then you can set the rate per type of task. So in this example, we have an EKG is $20 per EKG. In this example, this person would get $100 because they did 5 EKGs. With the number of patients here, you can also set a bonus if someone sees a certain number of patients. So let's say, for example, this account, if you see 20 or more patients, then you get a bonus of $50 per shift. You can see 20 patients seen here. If on the shift the number of patients is greater than 20 or 19, then we can boost that total pay by $50 here. This is the last one I'll go into before we actually demo this in the account. But this one's interesting because it's wage scales based on the user. So you can adjust a user's pay based on their scale. And in this example, what we have is seniority. So for example, you can mark someone as having been at the company for 1 year, and maybe after that point, they actually get a bump of 50 cents on their pay rate. So a user pay over here, if we look at the requirements, a user pay would increase the longer they're in a role, and this could occur from the set date that they complete onboarding. So you would be able to utilize automations to mark the seniority. So you could say, look at the start date, and then 1 year after that, mark them as 1 year tenure. And the amount they're paid may change over time. So once they move from 1 year into 1.5 years, for example, you can boost that pay rate by more. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the account. So in here, these are the same examples that we went through. I just want to pull up how you actually set them up. So we can increase, for example, we have on shifts, the start time is, and I'll show you what it looks like to select the day. So right now, this is what it will set up with. It's just a time. You can either insert a variable, or if you hit this little calendar button, you can select the actual day of the week. So I'm going to select Saturday and Sunday here. Additionally, you can set a location condition. So you can set as many conditions as you want on a pay rate or a payroll. So here, I'm going to just say that this only applies to Eugene and Portland. The adjustment here would be a pay rate increase of $2 and a bill rate increase of $3. You'll hit save down here, and then just a heads up that you will need to hit save on the full pay rules page in order to have that save. We have immediate need. That's one we went through, and I have it in 2 different spots here. So we're utilizing the same column, but different conditions. Up here, we have immediate need is within 24 hours. You can increase that pay rate by $3. Similarly, we have immediate need is within 2 hours. Pay rate can increase by $4 there. Let's go into housing stipends. So this is when we're actually going to apply to the total pay. So for this example, we're basing it off of the assignee. Maybe we have 4 people who are getting $400 a week. We're going to only apply this pay rule when the start time is on a Monday. And we're going to adjust the total pay by $400. We're going to give them an extra $400 as their housing stipend. Here we have our 5-star rating. So when a user rating is 5, that means that they've clicked 5 on that shift. then the pay rate can increase by 50 cents, for example. And this would potentially be a rating that you get from your facility users. We'll go into this one where we actually get reimbursed. So for the shift type of orientation, we're going to decrease the total pay by $30. So let's show you here. You can see that it's red. It's marking that this is actually a decrease rather than the increase that you see on the rest of these here. And here, these are our per unit pay rules. So I have EKGs as a column on the shift. It's a number column, so I'd input that number. I'm going to say, run this when EKGs is not empty, and we're going to price per unit $20. It's the same for the x-ray that we have here. We have this one for $15 per x-ray. This is the one where if you see a certain number of patients, you get a bump. So if it's 20 patients seen or more, we'll say if the number of patients is greater than 19, then let's give them a $50 bump to their total pay. Last one here is seniority. So I just did 1 year, but let's say that the pay seniority, we're pulling this from the user, is 1 year. You can increase that pay rate by 90 cents. So again, we'll go ahead and hit save here. We'll close this out, and I want to show you how it applies on the schedule. So in here, I created these yesterday. You can see that this location is Eugene, and it's on Saturday. And she got a 5-star rating. So if we do the breakdown here, we can see that the base rate was $100. She got a weekend increase of $2 because it's on Saturday or Sunday. And then she got a 5-star rating of 50 cents, or increase of 50 cents here. Additionally, we can see that we got that increased bill rate bump with the weekend. If we come down here, we can see the total pay and total bill. I don't think there's any other additional pieces on this one. All right, so let's go into another shift here. So on Andrew, what we could do is put in a certain amount of x-rays. So let's say, for example, he did 5 x-rays, 3 EKGs, but he saw 22 patients. We'll go ahead and save that. And then we can see on the breakdown here, we got the EKGs. And then we want to also see the x-rays and the number of patients there. Let's take a look. All right, we'll come back to that one. Over here, there's another one we want to see. You can see that this person got a 1-star user rating, so they're not going to get that bump that they would get with the 5-star. Over here, we see that EKG, we added in 5, they saw 26 patients, and they're getting that bump of 5 $20 EKGs here, and then on their total pay, they're getting the additional $50 for seeing more than 20 patients. All right, I think that covers our examples here. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to your Teambridge CSM, and we'd be happy to help you or set these up with you in your account. Thank you.